Let me take this opportunity to thank the Institute for inviting Kenya to this meeting. This is my second year. I was here last year. I was impressed. That's why I'm back again. I'll be a bit brief. Distinguished participants, I want to thank the ICT for the invitation to be part of these deliberations. Furthermore, I want to say how glad I am to be in Israel, whose experience with terrorism, unfortunately, knows few equals. It's a chance for me to listen and learn. We both share a common threat against our security posed by deranged people who don't believe in any religion. For instance, recent arrests in our country show the Islamic State's growing presence in East Africa, where they are recruiting young Kenyans for jihad abroad and raising fears that some of them will return to threaten the country. We in Kenya have been assaulted by hateful, unthinking cowards whose depravity motivates them to seek gratification in killing and maiming innocent, harmless people. Their moral deformity is monstrous and appalling. Their commitment to evil has robbed their hearts of the merest suggestion of human consideration. That does not mean they are impregnable. Terrorism can and must be fought mercilessly and defeated where it occurs. Working together, therefore, will help us defeat the scourge of this terror even faster. In this regard, I want to acknowledge with gratitude the important cooperation we have with the State of Israel and with several more important allies who are represented here. In every major attack we have suffered, our friends have rallied to our side. We are grateful for this solidarity. As a result of our close ties with Israel, Kenyan security troops have benefited from increased training, equipment, and intelligence sharing, which has boosted their combat capability in the war against terrorism. Our partnership in fighting terrorism has led to great benefits, particularly in terms of strategic intelligence and analytical capabilities. Allow me now to make a few more comments on the phenomena of global migration, integration, and terrorism, the main topics which will preoccupy me during this conference. The terrorist threat in Europe is at a peak and continues to grow. Europe is therefore facing a genuinely transnational threat with strong links to armed conflicts raging across the Muslim world. IS continues to be the most prominent threat, and although military efforts against ISIS in Syria and Iraq have reduced the combat capability of the group, as well as its territorial control, IS has consequently started giving more priority to hitting Western targets in our country through planned, more complex attacks such as the ones in Paris and Brussels. While a majority of European militants are disenfranchised migrants, a smaller number of entrepreneurs, resourceful and ideologically motivated terrorist cell builders play a crucial role in formation of terrorist cells. The entrepreneurs operate on behalf of armed groups in conflict zones, making the threat more ideological, strategic, and organized than many assume. Entrepreneurs tend to be veterans of jihadi activism within Europe and through their foreign fighting, and there has been a veteran effect, quote unquote, in European Judaism, which applies to IS threat. A generalized identity crisis among young second-generation descendants of immigrant Muslims, as elsewhere, appears then to lie behind the most recent unprecedented jihadist mobilization. Migrant descendants born or socialized in a European country are often caught in an odd balance between cultures and especially prone to identity crisis connected with the diaspora situation. Too many of them have developed little, if any, affection for the EU nation in which they were born or raised, even though they show scant attachment to the nation from which their parents or grandparents originated. Jihadist propaganda offers an extreme violent solution to their people's identity conflicts, rather than with different concept of nation, the nation of Islam as promised by Islamic State and also Al-Qaeda. This phenomenon is also common in our part of the world. We are a country that has been under constant attack by terrorist groups, by Al-Qaeda, Al-Shabaab, and with ISIS now joining them. Into this mix, we struggle to manage the return of hundreds of Kenyans returning from Somalia, where they make up a significant number of Al-Shabaab's foreign fighters. In the future, we will likely also have to deal with returning IS extremists as well as self-radicalized lone wolf attackers inspired by extremist ideology and online propaganda. It is therefore not far-fetched to suppose that we in Kenya risk finding ourselves fairly soon in the position that Europe finds itself in. With regard to returning fighters, the Islamic threat is growing in Europe because of the return of many of the Europeans who have gone off to Syria and Iraq to fight for Islamic State. Many of these radicalized fighters are returning to Europe with combat skills and real military experience that translate into further acts of terror. Foreign fighters generally gain training and combat experience that can lead to more sophisticated and deadly attacks. We know that the presence of foreign jihadi veterans both dramatically increases the terrorist plot's chance of success and the attack's lethality. The challenge posed by detainees is threefold. Recidivism rates are uncertain. Law enforcement cannot manage the numbers of prospective returnees alone, and returnees from non-Western countries pose a threat to their home countries. A global architecture should be put in place to mitigate the threats from foreign fighter returnees. These are serious concerns to Kenya and the Horn of Africa because our youth, through developments in technology and telephony, are readily accessing these tactics and skills. In Kenya, we have an estimated 3 million holders of smartphones. Kenyans follow, and everybody voluntarily to be as a fan of any of the European football teams. I also belong to one we can discuss later. NCTC appreciates being part of the summit. Neither the attacker nor the defenders can afford to rest. In the long run, they are forever spurring one another on. Attackers develop new ways to defeat countermeasures, which in turn leads defenders to develop better countermeasures. In turn, attackers develop better methods of attacks and so forth. While these results at the right moment and the right mix like this conference can be extremely effective. It is also the wish of the NCTC Kenya that you will find some time and space during this conference and give some thoughts and way forward on the nexus between cultism and radicalization, with particular emphasis on how either should be an easier path to radicalization or recruitment into violent extremism. Finally, in the fight against terror, we join all of you here today to say that we shall not relent. We shall sustain the work of keeping the world safe to protect ourselves and our property. Terrorism aims to destroy the precious freedoms we all have fought so hard to win. We not know peace so long as this threat of terror exists in the world. Today, I stand here before you to reaffirm our resolve as a country to stand with the international community. We are well aware that the peace and security have a price. Our job is to minimize the risk to our people. And now ends and ways. The National Counter-Terrorism Center, apart from other initiatives, has put in place a multi-agency unit to deal with disengagement, rehabilitation, and reintegration of the returnees both in and out of the correctional and aftercare units. In doing this, we have also pulled in other non-state actors, especially community-based organizations and other non-government operatives. Thank you very much. May God bless Israel, bless the whole world. Thank you.